the March 17th, 2025 regular meeting of the Board of Education of the Phelps-Clifton Springs School District. Pam, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So our mics are not working, so we just need to speak up. All right, roll call.
Lynn Hebrecht, board member. Lindsay Marino, board member.
Mike Dorr, board member.
Heather Rockefeller, board member. Doug Gallagher, board member.
Matt Goodman, board member.
Carl DeBosch, business administrator. Nick Gamster, superintendent.
Tracy Altman, board member.
Pamela Mann, district clerk.
All right, the Phelps-Clifton Springs Central School District Board of Education meets to publicly conduct its business in accordance with the law. The public is invited to observe these proceedings but is not entitled to respond or disrupt them, especially when such disturbances can run counter to the district's code of conduct and the welcoming spirit of our district. The public is reminded of the context of board meetings. Board members are volunteers, audience members are visitors to school grounds, and student and staff well-being is at the heart of board operations. Visitors are reminded of the courage it takes to speak up as members of our community and the importance of encouraging civic and civil engagement. The board strives to hear all community voices during its public meetings in a safe, respectful, and orderly manner. The behavior that we expect of all students in our classrooms is also expected from visitors at board meetings. In an effort to ensure that community members' concerns are heard, the board reminds speakers to address the board in a civil manner, refrain from discussing specific personnel or students, limit outbursts, and limit unnecessary noise. The board encourages an atmosphere of respect and tolerance and strict adherence to its code of conduct. Moving on to our agenda, is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of the agenda as presented say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carried. All right, on to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda items A through I as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of the consent agenda items as presented say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried. On to presentations and music in our schools. Mr. Hope.
Good evening. Good to see everybody here. I just want to say thank you to everybody in the audience and the board for having us tonight. We've got our high school jazz band tonight playing for you. It is Music in Our Schools month through the month of March. So we have a couple performances later next week for our regular concerts. Our jazz band plays in this January, and then we play at the end of the year. It's a great group of guys and folks here that we got. And we meet once a week. They come and do everything. They do music, they do sports. Just show of hands real quick if you guys did sports tryouts this week. You're running Duke's running from the tryouts this week. You're in the musical over the weekend. Raise your hand. Okay, a couple folks in the musical there. Yep. So there's a lot that they do, and I'm very grateful that they're here tonight, and grateful every week for the support that we have for music. It's really a special thing that we've got. We're really enjoying our facilities over there with the latest capital project. It's been fantastic. We had all county here for this past January, and everybody was very jealous, so it's very nice to have a really awesome space and the support every day that you give them. So thank you for that. We're going to play two tunes. One of them is, it's obviously Music in Our Schools month, but it's also March. It's Happy St. Patrick's Day. We didn't bring bagpipes, so I apologize for that. We're going to do two, probably the most opposite of Celtic music. We're going to do Frankenstein by Edgar Winter, and then we're going to do a tune called Cold Duck Time, and it's just a funk tune. So we're going to play those two tunes. We'll hear some improvisers, and we'll go from there. So thanks again. Let's take a concert back.
Ready?
time. Head twice. Solos. Matt. Was it Matt Lee? Carter. Background on solos. Right? And then shout. And then out again. Build up the drums. I'll be ready. Here we go. 1, 2, 1, 2, yeah.
Thank you.
Shout out to you hired the right guy for that high school job. What a wonderful colleague he's been to work with. I've been so blessed. So thank you.
This is probably your last time seeing Mr. Godfrey here.
Unless it's a recognition during June, right?
Well, yeah, but I mean, playing music.
Absolutely, absolutely. Who knows, maybe we can twist his arm into coming back next year. Right?
I think he enjoys that.
He fill in.
He might come back.
He would. Totally would. Thank you. That's a great way to start a meeting. All right. Next is the Winter Athletic Celebration, Mr. Laverne.
Good evening, everybody. Pardon me, I'm getting over, I was a little sick and under the weather over the weekend, so I'm just recovering from that. So, just good evening. Thank you for the Board of Education for having us here to recognize some of our winter athletes. This winter season was a remarkable season here at Mid-Lakes. Lacrosse cheerleading, boys swimming, girls and boys bowling, girls and boys wrestling, girls and boys basketball, girls and boys indoor track. We had over 294 athletes participating in grades 7 through 12 here at Mid-Lakes. 132 of those were varsity athletes. We'd like to recognize that we had 3 teams that were honored as scholar athlete teams. That's the girls indoor track team, girls basketball, and boys swimming. There was 45 individual scholar athlete honors. And as you can see how hard our students work to maintain a balance between the classroom and their sports. It's amazing. So just give them a round of applause for that. Tonight we're here to celebrate the accomplishment of several of our winter athletes who competed at the highest level and achieved some milestones this season. These student athletes have been leaders and showing the hard work and dedication has paid off. We'll start with indoor track and field. We have Hayden Wells here tonight. She would recognize her for her outstanding performance in the pole vault this season. Hayden captured a sectional title, clearing an impressive 9 feet 3 inches on the pole vault. It's got to be one of the scariest events that I've seen people compete in, so I give her accolades for taking that and making it look effortless. Hayden's commitment and mastering those skills have paid off with a sectional title, and this is not her first sectional title, so just congratulations on a tremendous achievement. Our next track and field athlete is not here tonight, but we'd like to celebrate Aiden Bryant, who dominated performance in sectionals, earning 2 sectional titles. Aiden won the long jump and triple jump with incredible marks of 24 feet, 1¼ inches. The triple jump with a 50 feet and a ½ inch. These outstanding performances qualified Aiden to compete at states in the long, triple, and he also qualified for the 55 meter and also was able to go on to nationals. Unfortunately, he had a hamstring injury and wasn't able to compete at states. He tried to give it a go at nationals when the long jump was pulled out for the triple jump. And we look forward to continue to see what his success will be in the future. So congratulations, Aiden. Next up, we have girls wrestling. We have Abby Hargarther here, Clara Bond, and Lizzie Mountain. Claire's not here. This year marked a historic milestone for girls wrestling in New York State. Has become an official sanctioned championship sport. Abby, Clara, and Lizzie made history by qualifying for the first ever sanctioned national in this girls wrestling state championship. The dedication and resiliency have not only brought recognition, but also paved the future generations for female wrestlers here at Mid-Lakes. It has been a few years in the making under the emerging sports umbrella in New York State, and it's finally continued to full circle to be recognized as state championship competition. They were competed this year at the state championship, and they went 1 and 2, right? So, but they fought really hard at sectionals. They battled and worked their way, and they earned that spot at the state meeting. So, congratulations. Our next individual, he could not be here. He had a prior engagement with big brothers, big sisters, but that is Jorge Garcia. For boys wrestling, he had an incredible season on the mat. He captured a sectional title at 170 pounds.
and continued his postseason run by placing fourth at super sectionals. Wrestling in the sport demands relentless dedication and mental toughness, and Jorge's success was a reflection of his hard work and perseverance in the classroom and also on the mat. So congratulations to Jorge Garcia. I don't think I see, is Ethan Rodman here? No. Okay. This year, in my 19 years here as an athletic director, I don't think we've sent this many people in one season to a state competition. So it was an amazing winter, to say the least. Ethan Broadman in the pool, he made waves this season by qualifying for the state meet in both the 100 freestyle and the 50 freestyle. Competing at the state level is a remarkable accomplishment. Ethan represented Mid Lakes with pride, finishing 34th in the 100 free and 37th in the 50 free at Ithaca College. I hope I didn't mix those up. I believe that's the order that it was in as far as the places go. We are incredible and proud of Ethan and his dedication showcasing Mid Lakes on that stage. And also Coach Huber, who was also recognized as Coach of the Year in the Finger Lakes. So congratulations on your dedication and representing Mid Lakes with pride. Next, we have our girls bowling team. They want to come on up. We have Alexa, Marialis, Olivia,
Go that way.
Emma, Amanda, Liesel, Gabby, Emily, Ella, all right, and then Mr. Monagle and Mr. Burnett. We'd also like to celebrate our outstanding achievements of our team, our Mid Lakes girls bowling team, who won Class C sectional titles, securing their place at the state tournament. Their hard work and their team spirit carried them all the way to third place finish at states this past weekend with their outstanding accomplishment as a team. Individually, Olivia Miller had a record-setting performance at sectionals, winning an individual sectional title and an incredibly high score. Her domination showed by earning her a spot at the state Section 5 composite team. And with that, her score was within the top 4 in the state between boys and girls. If I'm not mistaken, is that correct? That's what I heard at the Rose Bowl, so I just want to make sure that I'm saying that right. So top 4 in the state, not only amongst girls, but also amongst boys. So that was just an outstanding performance. Like people were saying that she was like bowling, like putting on a clinic that day. So it was just amazing. So it's the greatest accomplishment for these young ladies and these coaches for their dedication. So thank you for everything that you've done, and congratulations. These student athletes have demonstrated true sportsmanship and hard work, and their success is a reflection of their dedication and guidance of their coaches and their support of their families and their community. I want to thank everybody, all the families and community for their support this season for these kids. They deserve your support, and we thank you for everything you've done. So congratulations.
Congrats to everyone. All right, we'll take a 5-minute snack break. For anybody that's wanting to eat. See him there.
Yeah, grab a cookie. Grab a cookie on the way out.
All right. Margot and Jeff, you're up. Oh.
I thought, oh, like stuff, okay.
Sorry.
Yep.
I was right. You're not up. FFA. Where, oh, Marina,
Yes.
come on up.
I have the video queued up, so whenever
Okay.
you would like me to.
Well, I just want to thank you again for allowing us the opportunity to come and speak once more. We're here to talk about Camp Oswegatchie. By chance, I never heard of it. Go, Tracy. So Camp Oswegatchie is up in Krogan, New York, up in Adirondack Park. It is an educational center that's run by New York FFA Foundation. It offers learning camps throughout the year, but they are most known for their summer camp. It's 6 weeks long. They actually had it add a week because of the amount of interest. And it's the unique thing about Camp O is it's not just open to New York, Connecticut can go, New Hampshire, Vermont, anyone who's in travel there, it's open to. And you don't have to be an FFA member to attend. It's geared towards FFA, that tends to be the majority of students who go. Just because you're not an FFA doesn't mean you can't ever experience Camp O, which is really unique. It's not inclusive. If you were to ask an FFA member who has been in a chapter that is established, is not in year one, what's one of their favorite memories? They're either going to say National Convention or Camp O. That seems to be the trend of talking to other FFA members from other chapters, Penn Memphis, Whitman, and all across the state. Camp O, there's something magical about it. I've been lucky and fortunate enough in June. They hold the teachers conference for all ag educators through NYAA, our Ag Teacher Association, and I love it. I don't get to do camp stuff. I'm in PD the whole time. Jess hasn't gone yet. I think we'll get her. You're in PD the whole time and you're learning, which is also fun. But there's just something magical about being at Camp O. And then I wish I could have gone as a student. I didn't know that I had that opportunity when I was an FFA member, and I wish I did because of the magic and what it can provide. I mean, it's a week out in nature. It pushes you to meet others. It teaches you skills without you realizing what you're learning, and a lot of it's our soft skills, our leadership, our confidence in ourselves. And the friendships that a lot of members have spoken about, taken away from their week at camp. I don't think you can put a value on that type of experience just because there's so much that you can get out of just 1 week. And yes, you're horseback riding, you're hiking, you're canoeing, you're kayaking, you're swimming. They have a high ropes course, you're doing all that fun stuff, but they don't realize how much they have embedded into that to make you a better person. And that's what FFA is. We're growing our future leaders. We're developing our personal success, and it's just one more way that FFA accomplishes that. So we couldn't bring any of our members because they have not been yet, so we're hoping that this summer, upon your approval, that they are able to attend. We actually have one member in the crowd who will be going, and 2 others that are interested, and hoping that this is going to become reality. So instead of having my FFA members here to speak to you about their experience, because we aren't at that point yet, we have a little promo video that we would just like to show you. So we're just kind of hoping that you, as a board, see the value that we see and the potential that it could do for our students. I know Karen doesn't want me to put the spotlight on her, but she chose to stay and watch me, so I'm putting her on the spotlight. It's something that they have been talking about and really, really looking forward to. We, for this year, would be going up with Marcus Swimming. Our state is divided into districts, and we're in District 8, and a lot of chapters will tend to go with their district just to have something familiar with it when you're up at camp, because there's no self-service. But what you have is what you have with you, and that is it. Advisors, we don't even have to go. That's run by the FFA staff. So we can go ourselves and enjoy our piece of it, but it's all run by the camp counselors and the camp staff. And so they tend to go as a district. But the week that District 8 goes is the same as our county fair. So Marcus Whitman has decided they want to go week 6, which is the week that we would like to go. That's August 3rd through 9th. So we're looking, they have offered to help us get there if we do a share, they take us one way and we bring them back the other way. And that is a lovely relationship that I hope that is sustainable moving forward, because there's a lot of events that we go to. Amy Vanderway has been processing our field trip requests, and she said we have by far won the medal for the most field trip requests this year. And so it is nice to be able to share that piece. Yeah. Any questions on Campo or?
So who's it open to, as far as the students? Do they already have to be part of, FFA, or is it open to all the students? How does that
It
work?
is, you don't have to be an FFA member to attend. It's mostly FFA kids who go, because in order to register for summer camp, it's through the advisors. We, at 8 a.m. on February 7th, every advisor in the state logged in and claimed spots. In most of our districts were waitlisted. We were lucky we got spots to hold. And then camp sends you a code. Then we, upon approval, would then be able to give that code to the students to then register. So they can't go on Oswegochie's website. Like anybody can access Oswegochie's website, but nobody can actually register without a teacher. So if you didn't have an FFA advisor who started that process, it would have to be somebody else that showed interest and knew how to sign up ahead of time and get your codes for your spots.
Right. How many spots do you have?
We had 9 potential, but 3 confirmed who are going.
How big is a week camp for the whole place? Like how many students are involved? Do you know roughly?
I know it.
A couple hundred.
It's,
I was gonna say it's gotta be at
They
least
cap
2,000,
it.
it's 250, so.
There's camping, where you put your tent in, there you go, but they also have cabins, so that it's, a couple hundred, because they can't max out the cabins. And they are separated by sex. So that,
What's the Adirondack race?
the duck race. So the Adirondack duck race is a way to fundraise to help offset the cost. It's $495 for each student to go. They have to put down a $100 deposit, which you cannot, just to make sure that their spot is held, and then by a certain point in May, we have to make sure that the full $495 is there, and a lot of districts are rural like us, and so that's for me, that's a lot of money too. So the duck rapes, you can buy a gold duck for $10, or a silver duck for $10, and a gold for $50. And it goes towards the cost of holding camp. Hiring their counselors, training their counselors, buying the food, everything that goes into what makes camp run. The great thing about that though is 50% of what is fundraised goes back to the chapter. So we have that on agenda too. So if that is also approved, then we would have our students go out and promote selling these ducks. Then on April 27th, they release all the ducks that have been purchased in the Oswegatchie River, and it's just this big celebration up there. If you're there to attend, to see. I've never been, but I hear it's a lot of fun, they have a lot of events. But 50% of whatever gets raised is you identify what chapter you're buying a duck for when you do it. It goes back to the chapter, and the chapter can then either make an account with Campo, and that money goes directly towards anything that they do at Campo, or it can be written as a check to us, and then we divvy it up.
I just want to point out that one of the things both our advisors did with the help of Marcus Whitman, they realized that you can also go through BOCES to pay the admission fee to Camp O. And as a result of that, if a district were to do a co-serve with BOCES, then BOCES gives that district a certain portion of money back in aid. And so all they need to come up with is the difference. So as a result, it even further reduces the cost on the student, or whether that's paid by the family, or that's paid by the club through fundraising. So they found some creative ways to further reduce their cost as well. It'll be even cheaper. By the time they're done, it'll be even cheaper.
Yeah.
So that's what we want, it's like, it's going.
So do you think they'll get closer to the 9 eventually?
I think so. I mean, Mary Kulbach was the advisor at Whitman, and Carly Bowser and Ann we're constantly, because we're brand new advisors trying to figure this all out. And Mary was saying she reserved 25 spots, just without even just 25, because they know they're gonna fill it, no matter what.
I think once we send students who can then talk about the value of it and to be able to share with parents the safety and things like that, I think it will definitely increase.
I mean, it originally was only 5 weeks, week-long each time for the whole state, and they had to add that 6th week just to accommodate the interest. And by 8:03, we have a whole group chat for all the District 8 advisors. And did you get spots? Did you get spots? And Mary and I are sitting there like, maybe. Because it has become such a well-known camp and a camp that kids want to go to. Even though there's no cell phone service.
That's the best reason.
You have to go, I mean, once you're at camp, you're stuck. You have to go out, because I had to do this when I was at conference to check in on my husband, make sure he was alive, girls. You have to go into town, and it's a good several mile drive. And so they are isolated in nature.
What were some of the reasons why the other students didn't want to go this year? Just because they didn't know what it would be like, or are there other obstacles?
I think with one student who really wants to go, parents have said no due to current academic performance. So that was what that was the consequence that they decided. The others, one I don't think understood what they were signing up for, even though present all you do blue in the face. But I don't think it was quite processing what it entailed until I was, okay, I need to know, I want to release spots that we aren't going to use. And the other one, I think I did the same thing. Really wanted to go, but is also juggling a lot at home. Because we don't, outwardly, we don't want to make anybody feel like
Obligated to go. Yeah.
obligated or feel bad for asking for help, so we're not, please come to us right now in front of everybody, but
Yeah.
those that we know we need help, let us know.
Well, that's why I was asking,
Yeah.
because if there was,
We've been very fortunate, and it's not related to them, but we've gotten several donations just to support as a brand chapter. The community is very, very, very supportive of us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
For everything that you do. Okay. Now Margot.
Thank you for having us before we get started. I was just reflecting, listening to presentations today. This, in my opinion, is really what we're celebrating today, and the things that we're talking about as a board and as a community at school, it's very powerful, right? We celebrated the performing arts. Mr. Hope talked about the musical last weekend, and the jazz band and the music recognition this month. We celebrated student athletes, both performance in their athletic events and their academics. We just heard from a growing program that education is bigger than the walls in which we are in the school setting. Like, there's opportunities outside that are unique, and giving kids those opportunities are extraordinarily important. We're going to talk about academic interventions, instruction, and how we partner with the community. As well as additional supports. Later on this evening, I know Nick and Carl are going to present the budget. It talks about fiscal responsibility. And then there's some of Nick's topics for the superintendent's report. It's really just a full meeting, and I think it's really just highlighting what schools are and should be about, right? All the things that we do. So thank you for having us present and be just a small piece of the puzzle tonight. I would tell you that, we've talked a lot about paying attention to our academic gains. We've talked a lot about consistency in instruction and providing a strong foundation around Tier 1 teaching and learning across our district. MTSS is really, I would say, a robust beast, right? And what it's intended to do is, it's intended to capture and ensure that all kids are having success. And identifying where those kids are at, where those students are at, and putting things in place to support that, from Tier 1 all the way through Tier 3. And as Margot and I were reflecting on tonight's presentation, please don't underestimate exactly how much has been gained by folks in this district, and certainly through Margot's leadership. Margot's extraordinary leadership, in my opinion. Building a robust, multi-tiered systems of support is not easy, and we are well on our way. And so I just appreciate the board's time to allow us to brag a little bit about the work that's being done in our district on behalf of Margot's leadership, but certainly everyone who touches a student, everyone who gives a student positive behavior, specific praise, and hands them a ticket, right? Or recognizes them in some way. Every partnership we have with the community is really what makes us grow stronger as a district.
Thanks. I'm excited to be here tonight, and to be honest, as we were thinking over what the topics we would share and present to you would be tonight, there's a lot of things that are happening and in motion, so it became difficult at times to choose what those things to highlight were. So I appreciate the time, and I'll try to do justice to all the positive things that we have going on here. So Nick, if you could advance the slide, please. Jeff gave a little bit of an overview about what multi-tiered systems of support look like. When I describe the role of an MTSS coordinator in general, I would say that multi-tiered systems of support are about how we organize and allocate supports for students, how we know what students need, and how we know if what we're doing is working. So in order to do that, I just want to give you a little bit of a lingo check really quick. Throughout the presentation, you'll likely hear me mention Tier 1 and Tier 2, not so much Tier 3. But I wanted to kind of anchor your understanding in that when I talk about Tier 1, I'm talking about the things that we do for all of our students across the board. When I'm talking about Tier 2, I'm talking about things that we do for some of our students. So about 15 to 20% of our students. When I talk about Tier 2, I'm talking about that subset of our students. So just to give you a little bit of a baseline here. Speaking of baselines, when we reflected upon what our progress has been this year, it's really important to think about the foundation that we walked into with this year. And all of those things up there are things that we started our school year with or continued to work throughout the school year on. So obviously our Mid-Lakes values are the anchor for everything that we do, and you'll see those come up a couple times throughout our presentation here. We've also started off with a solid foundation in academics by the development of benchmark assessments, which are common assessments. Common meaning everybody in a grade level or within a department do the same assessments to really find out where students are. Continuing to work on curriculum mapping to continue to establish a guaranteed and viable curriculum. And we also use a FastBridge, is the program it's called, but it's a universal screener for reading and math. The other foundational pieces that we had are our staff being trained in specific positive feedback, which you'll hear come up again in this presentation. Doing a good job documenting any behavior needs, the continuation of Eagle Time, and you'll hear about our student acknowledgement system as well. And this year we switched to a new universal social emotional screener, which has led to some gains in movement around small groups in Tier 2. All of this to say, Nick, if you can push spacebar, all of these pieces that are foundational for us have allowed us to really be more proactive this school year, but also reactive in ways that we might not have been able to be before. So I hope to highlight some of that for you this evening. Go ahead, Nick. We're going to talk about 4 areas of impact in both buildings. I'll talk about academics, social, emotional, behavioral work, attendance, and community. This is, again, what we're going to talk about is not an exhaustive list of all the things that have happened this school year, but some of the things that we think have made a really big impact. So I'm going to jump right into how academics have shifted a little bit at our elementary school this year, and start out by celebrating or shouting out our data days programming. So data days are a trimesterly occurrence where our interventionists, so math and reading teachers, meet with our general classroom teachers to discuss student progress and use the data that they've gotten from our screeners to move students in and out of academic supports. So you'll see at the top that we have in reading and math, we've released many students. When I say released, what that means is our intervention, our work that we've done to build them up and fill some of their gaps has been so effective that they're able to not receive that intervention anymore. So being able to move that many students is pretty impressive. We also had several switches. So that might be a different switch in instructional focus. It might be maybe you had a Tier 3 need, which is a really high need, and we closed some of that gap, so now you're at a lower level of intervention. You might still get it, but you're at Tier 2. So what this really shows to me is that we are building upon the foundation that we have around knowing what our students need and knowing where they're at and making informed decisions about what they need and what next steps might be for them. So that was a major positive when we wrapped up our data days. End of February, we did that. Go ahead. I'm going to shift now to the secondary school. This gets a little confusing because I shift between schools. But what we have going on at our secondary school is it's the first time I've seen this level of responsiveness around student need. So again, we continue to look at what we have as our foundation. So we have benchmark scores, we have student grade scores, and what we did was we had the opportunity to look at our students' data and to say, which of these students could we take our first sort of step at being responsive with, and could we move them into a structured study hall where they're able to receive some support, even if it's just a smaller, sort of less distracting environment, but preferably maybe with an ELA teacher or with a math teacher who could help support them through that. We made, as a team at the secondary school, they made the decision to try that out. And you can see some of the results from that. We review this data about every 3 to 4 weeks, and at last check, 7 out of the 9 students we had moved for ELA purposes were responding, their grades were higher. And after 3 weeks of the intervention, typically we say we want 6 to 8 weeks of the intervention to see results. But after only 3 weeks, 55% of students who were moved, they had their grades up and they were responding to that intervention. So we're seeing that that's something that makes a difference for our kids. So the next thought is how do we scale that up to make it more sustainable and to make more of our students be able to access that support. So again, working on being more responsive to what we're seeing from our students. I'm going to switch over to probably the indicator that I'm most excited about, I think. I don't know if it's the one I'm most proud of, but it's definitely the one I'm most excited about. And just talk about some of the social, emotional, and behavioral things that we have going on. At the elementary, we continue to have our Eagle Time, which is a community building and instructional time for teaching character traits such as perseverance or honesty. What you see on the left is a picture of a student work from last year that says my favorite piece of this school year was going to the zoo and Eagle Time. So that was a first grader. It's just exciting to see the way that they're processing the parts of their day. And what we're also seeing as an impact of Eagle Time is that our common language is spreading more. not only can students identify some of the character traits and use them fluidly in their conversation, but they're also doing some reflecting. So you'll see on the right-hand side is a picture of, it's called the tree of choices, and it's a way of thinking through how to respond to strong emotions and how to have a positive outcome. On the right, we continue to work through our Eagle ticket system, which is given anytime a student meets expectations, they can receive an Eagle ticket. You do not have to go above and beyond to receive an Eagle ticket. There is a significant research base that says that when you point out what somebody is doing correctly, that changes behavior the fastest, faster than error correction, faster than pointing out what they're doing wrong. So Eagle tickets give us an opportunity to do that. You can see with our numbers compared to this year and last year, we're right about at the same place. But what we're doing this year is because we have some data about where we're going, what our Eagle ticket data might look like, we're able to plan more, exciting celebrations and able to plan more proactively around what we want to celebrate as a school. So you'll see we recently had Wildlife Rockstars come in last week, and they presented around several animals, and the students had a chance to interact and ask questions. As a celebration for, again, showing our Midlands values. We continue at the elementary. This year we have a new Tier 2 intervention, so remember Tier 2 is for some students. It's called Eagle Connection. You might have heard of check-in, check-out. What this intervention is it's designed to give students increased structure in their day, give them more opportunities to connect with an adult. We currently have 34 students enrolled, and 33 of those students are responding, meaning that their trend line and their data is going up. And we've had 14 students graduate from Eagle Connection this year, which is pretty exciting. So when you can say to a child, we realize you might need some support at this point, and we're ready to take the scaffolds off now, that's something to celebrate. The picture there is of our Eagle Connection check-in table. First thing in the morning, students come in and check with their Eagle Connection coach. So it starts off on a positive foot. And on the right, you'll see our emotion element challenge. Our district team had a chance to look at some of our behavior trends and noticed that our students had an increase in hands-on behaviors. So what can we do? We know that we're seeing this increase. What can we do to be more responsive about it? So our hypothesis was if we teach students to identify their emotions, they'll be able to use appropriate coping strategies. But in order to do that, you have to be able to identify when you're having a hard time. Like, you can't just say, throw a coping strategy at a kid. Take some deep breaths. I don't even know how I'm feeling right now. So we created a challenge for classrooms to practice naming emotions and had, this is one of those things where I think we wish we had a little bit more participation or a little bit more success, but it was a good opportunity for us to be proactive around what we were noticing for our students. At the secondary school, our Eagle Acknowledgements, which are our student acknowledgement system at the high school, continues to grow at an unprecedented rate. You'll see the difference in Eagle Acknowledgements from this year versus last year. One of our building goals of the secondary school was to increase Eagle Acknowledgements by 10% this year, and we have done that already. We did that back in January, so we're crushing it. We've got a couple of competitions going on, but I think what's important is that our students have written 292 of these acknowledgements. And to me, what that really shows, again, if I'm trying to get at what the purpose of all of this work is that it's becoming part of our fabric of how we do things, is pointing out the positives in others. And I think the biggest thing to point out here is that I save a folder on I'm the one who sends out these Eagle Acknowledgements virtually, but I save a folder for anytime anybody responds to those emails, and I have over 101 emails back saying, thank you, I appreciate you putting this out there about my son, we're really proud of them, all of these different things, 101 responses. So to me, this is making an impact, not just for our students and staff, but also for families. At the secondary school, we tried out small groups this year using the data that we had from our universal social emotional screener. We identified some secondary students who would benefit from a coping skills group. And we took a shot at it, and we're running a coping skills group right now at the secondary school, which is not when I think about things going on in the region, it's not always something that's been successful in other districts. So to see it happening here, we're hoping to scale that up a little bit. And we also have benefited from our restorative coach, Tom Mitchell, who has been instrumental in helping provide reentry plans for after a student is suspended, providing some targeted academic support for our students, and continuing to help build our classroom, our school community in a positive way through restorative work. Attendance. So at the elementary school, hold on, let me take a deep breath, because I feel like I'm throwing a lot at you right now. Our attendance work has looked different at each building. At the elementary school, we have tailored our letter so that it points out when a child might be approaching chronic absenteeism, and we send those out now to any family who's had any absence. So that seems like a lot, but really what it is meant to do is meant to increase lines of communication between the school and families, and to really kind of emphasize that we want to keep your child maybe in the tier 1 of absenteeism to the best of your ability. Go ahead, Nick. And at the secondary school, they've had some success with some pretty cool interventions. They started off by identifying students who were at high rates of absenteeism, and as a PSO team, which is their counseling office, they divided up the students, they met with them, had conversations, and told students if you can increase your attendance, then you can be invited to a pizza party. Over 15, I was told the other day, over 15 students were able to improve their attendance rate and attend that pizza party. They didn't stop there. More recently, they looked at students with a negative rate of change in their attendance, and they've been reaching out to speak with families to try and troubleshoot and work more closely with families around getting students into school. Our community. When you think about all of the needs that our families and students have, we have to think outside the box about how we're going to meet those needs, because the school can't do everything. We work with our community partners. One of the things that was really helpful this year is we worked with the social workers to develop a single sign-up form for families to give them the opportunity to self-refer for specific support. So instead of us going out and saying, do you want this, do you need this, do you need this, families self-reported whether they needed holiday help, food help, dental cleanings, things like that. And because of that, we were able to more efficiently allocate support. So what we have on the right-hand side is a feature about our Family Support Center, which is a program we work with through BOCES. It offers short-term goal-based family counseling for free for need-based families. It was an option to indicate a need on that single sign-up form, but to me what's really impressive to look at is they do a pre-counseling and a post-counseling survey. And if you look at the metric all the way on the far right, for overall well-being, on average, families rated their overall well-being before that counseling at about a 5.88. After that 8 to 10 to 12 weeks of short-term goal-based family counseling, they rated themselves at about an 8.26. So there's lots of data there to show the impact of this work, but when families need help, we have a resource we can send them to that is effective. Go ahead. We were able to streamline our dental care, food distribution, and holiday giving work too. Over 24 students received an in-school dental cleaning recently through our partnership with Mosaic Health. For our holiday giving, we were able to connect with 93 families, and most recently for food delivery over February break, over 60 families. And to me, to tie that all together, it's important to know, we want to continue to message around the positive work that we've been doing. So we've developed 5 newsletters district-wide so far this year that have gone out on Parent Square, just to update families about what we've done, whether it's we've earned enough Eagle acknowledgements to have our popcorn party, or here are some read-alouds that are focused on honesty, that if you have a student in primary school or primary grades, they might be interested in learning about feelings through these books. So again, trying to interact with our community. We've had over 50 interactions on Parent Square, so whether it's an appreciate or a comment, it's just cool to see people kind of buying in and appreciating, I guess, the work that's been done. Go ahead, Nick. So this slide is on here because I may be the multi-tiered systems of support coordinator, but when you make this much change in such a short amount of time, you need to have voices from all over the place. So you can see we start with different levels of teams. On the bottom left, we have some of our student Eagle ambassadors who help make some decisions around celebrations, who help with communication. Most recently, they put together an expectations matrix for our Wildlife Rockstars time. This work cannot be done in isolation. You have to work with different stakeholders, things like that. So I think it's really important to just see the sheer number of names on here who have made an impact, and it's certainly not exhaustive. I could talk and talk and talk and talk about MTSS, but these are a couple of the topics that were in our presentation, but they also might be things that you have questions on. So at this point, I just wanted to open it up to you to see if there's anything that I could clarify or provide more information on for you.
I have two things.
Yeah.
Is it possible to get those slides?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That'd be cool. I'd like to be able to do that.
Sure.
If possible.
Sure.
The other thing, I do see the table set up in the primary school in the door when they come in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
But you said they check in with your Eagle Connection coach.
Mm-hmm.
Like, tell me how that works. Like, do
Yeah.
they just seek them out when they need them, or is there an expectation that they're supposed to check in a certain amount of times, or how does that
Yeah.
work?
So typically, so you're talking about Eagle Connection, which is a new Tier 2 intervention this year. These are students who need more structure, need more support, more opportunities for check-in, whether it's behavior or because they have like a need for connection with another adult. So any of our students on Eagle Connection have a coach, which is an assigned adult to work with them. They go to their coach first thing in the morning, and only some of them check in at that table that you saw on there. Some of them have coaches elsewhere in the building. But they check in, have like a typical kind, friendly greeting, and they set a goal for the day. So do you want to work on being responsible? Do you want to work on what you're doing in ELA? They set a goal for the day, and then they get a points sheet. The point sheet is the least important piece of all of this, but really what it does is it's a physical prompt to give students and staff the reminder to have conversations about, are you being respectful, responsible, independent, and kind during this selected time of your day. So if you saw a sheet for a child, you'd see the 4 columns for our values, and then you'd see different parts of their day. So the idea is that they see their coach, they get ready for the day, they go about their day, and they have set opportunities to check in and see how things are going with an adult. And then at the end of the day, they check out with their coach. So they'll go to wherever their coach is, they'll talk about their day, what can you do better tomorrow, okay, good luck in your baseball game, see ya. Like, that's it. And it's short interactions, but we found them to be really powerful. And I know that it's powerful because staff have told us, and they're asking for more slots for students in Eagle Connection. We started out really small to be sustainable, but they're finding it's making a difference. So did that answer your question?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I need someone to check in with too.
Amen. Me too.
I can pick somebody right in this room.
Anything else? Yeah.
Two things, well, actually 3. My son's been an Eagle ambassador for 2 years in Belgium.
Yay.
You said this has happened a lot in a short amount of time. How long has it been since you started implementing this?
So the work this is my 3rd year at Mid-Lakes. The work began before I started here. They did some sort of like beginning our first rounds of district teams or beginning conversations around student acknowledgements. But I think the most valuable thing that was done by my predecessor was that they established our Mid-Lakes values by reaching out to the community. So most of those foundations I showed you at the start of the presentation were not fully fleshed out in before I got here, but the roots were planted, so it became easier because of that. So about 3 years.
Okay, it's fascinating the amount of layers in this, and I gotta ask, was it like an organically grown thing, or was there a template you guys started with from like a big think tank or whatever?
Yeah. See on the top left, it says regional roundtable meetings. There is a community of practice in the area around MTSS. There's a guiding document that it's called the tiered fidelity inventory, but it's really just, these are the components you have to have that are research-based. And we look at that, I would say every I don't know, we probably look at that every 2 months or so, yeah. But that's a guiding document we use, but what it looks like from district to district is very different. So, like what we look like here is different from what Newark or from what Marcus Whitman may look like. Yeah.
That's part of the way it works, because it's individualized to your students.
Yeah.
That's some program that's.
Yeah, and I think we've been pretty intentional about the decisions that we've made, which has been really helpful, because it's not just like a throwing the baby out with the bathwater sort of thing. We've been really deliberate about the layers that we set first. So, and I will say, coming into a district where you don't know anybody, the leadership among our teachers and our staff and our administrators, like that is what has moved us, the knowledge of our staff and our community. So that's been really impactful. Well, thanks. I know that was a long presentation, but there's a lot to celebrate. So thank you so much, and we appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
I'll get you a
Thank you.
slide with
Thanks.
Budget presentation.
There you go.
Thank you, sir. All right. Thank you, everybody. So, once again, today is our second budget presentation out of our 3 mandatory presentations. I'll say this at the start of the budget presentation, and I'll say this at the end. After today, we have one more budget presentation to go. That is scheduled for April 23rd, the Wednesday night of the BOCES Board of Education vote as well. At that point, that is kind of the 11th hour in terms of our budget planning. So where we end up on April 23rd is essentially what the board is approving in terms of the overall budget for the 25-26 school year. This second presentation hones in on that final number. We're not there yet, but we're getting very close, because now we've fleshed out some numbers after meeting with directors and building principals. So you're going to see some numbers in detail broken down by various aspects of budget code. Other numbers are still going to be pretty broad. So as we talk about an agenda for tonight's meeting, you're going to see general support, operations and maintenance, and transportation, and the healthcare history or benefits, overall benefits. You're going to see those broken down in great detail. Those are essentially going to drive our expenditure increase. How much more are we looking to spend in those categories? After which, we're going to look at proposed reductions in staffing. How do we tighten our belt? How do we close the budget gap through some reductions in staffing? And finally, we're going to look at the money we're bringing in. So first, we're going to talk about the increase in expenditures. Next, we're going to talk about how much money is coming in. And based on those 2 comparisons, we're going to compare how much do we need to increase our tax levy and to close our budget gap. And we're going to do it with the revenue. We're going to do it with the use of reserves. And a tax levy, of course. Finally, we're going to look at a budget analysis over the last 5 to 6 years. How does this budget compare to previous years' budgets, and an approximate increase to folks' school tax bill, before we wrap things up with budget propositions and our next steps between now and April 23rd. So, general support. General support encompasses the Board of Education, the Office of the Superintendent, the Business Office, the central business office through Winnie Finger Lakes BOCES, where we have our treasurer, accounts payable, payroll, benefits, you name it. It talks about our legal services, our insurance, whether it's postage or printing. All of those fall under general support. As you look at in the far 2 right columns, you'll see the dollar increase in each category or the percentage increase. Sometimes the percentage increase might look large, but when you look at the dollar increase, it might not be so much when you compare it to the overall size of general support. But I'm going to start at the bottom. The general support part of this budget is we're proposing an increase in expenditures of $49,227, or overall 2.23%. The biggest drivers of this budget increase, when I say drivers, I'll actually take that back. The biggest driver is the $28,820 in the finance portion of this budget. So finance, once again, is business office, central business office, but it also incorporates our overall general liability insurance for the district. Only in the last 2 weeks did we find out that almost every district around us, their insurance premiums are going up somewhere to the vicinity of 15 to 20%. So a little shy of $20,000 is just going up as a result of insurance premium increase. Now, I don't mention this too much during budget presentations, but there's only 2 companies to pick from in New York State if you're looking to get your school district insured. One of them is Utica Insurance. We've been members for over 50 years. And the other one is NYSERD. NYSERD has suffered a significant loss ratio over the last handful of years, and so the districts that are insured with NYSERD actually saw mid-year increases this current year and are seeing even greater than 15 to 20% increases for next year. So we're actually with the company that is in better fiscal or financial shape, Utica National. But once again, their risk of liability is not just spread across New York State, it's spread across the United States and North America. And if you look at natural disasters across North America, at some point everybody else has to pick up the burden as well for their payouts or the money they're essentially paying out through claims. So we have one stable company who we're already with, and that company's projecting 15 to 20%, and it's not, we can't go shopping around because we're with one of 2. So that is the biggest driver of this portion of the budgetary increase. Everything else, additional BOCE services, whether it's for the print shop, postage, mailing, or for Erie One BOCE's policy services, you see a healthy portion of the $4,395 increase in the Board of Education line. But once again, that's to do with policy services, not necessarily any other contractual obligations. Operation and maintenance. Overall increase to operation and maintenance is $91,149, or 3.45% increase. What are the biggest drivers of that? The first one is salary. Salary is trending, once again, we're in the middle of contractual negotiations with the Employees Association. That is our facilities, transportation, and our food service departments, but also nurses. So those are the 4 groups we're currently still in negotiations with. The 3.73% increase represents salary increases for the facilities portion of that unit. Contractual expenses, $20,000 increase, or 8.33%. That $20,000 strictly is for some of the vendors that help support our infrastructure. Our building maintenance mechanics can do regular maintenance, but when an air conditioning unit or a pool pump dies and we need to get, or when a major above ground pump fails that sends water to this building, and we go just to buy some of those parts can be well close to $4,000 to $5,000 sometimes for just plumbing parts. And so when we call in a trained company vendor to deal with the HVAC controls, they're billing us to the tune of somewhere between $80 to $100 an hour. And that's not getting any cheaper year over year. So the $20,000 represents increases. In the event we need some of those specialized vendors to come to campus to address the needs of some of our older equipment and our older boilers or equipment in general. Utilities is seeing an increase of $25,000. Utilities encompasses sewer, water, telephone, natural gas, and electricity. The $25,000 increase is strictly for electricity. We bid cooperatively through Wayne Finger Lakes BOCES for electricity in our area, and we have a company, Energy Cooperative, that sends us a particular rate where we're locked in for the year, but they made a mid-year adjustment in terms of dollar per kilowatt hour, and that number has increased significantly where several districts are kind of panicking to what electricity bills could look like next year. So $25,000 increase is strictly for electricity in terms of where our utility increases are overall from one year to the next. Any questions so far? Transportation. Transportation, the first number, well, overall increase, $138,474, or 6.80%. Biggest drivers in this increase, number one is salaries. We've been very open and honest in our contractual negotiations with the Employees Association. One of our biggest concerns is having a fully staffed transportation department, and our admin cabinet hears it just about every week or every 2 weeks. We want to hire new drivers and we want to retain our drivers, and in order to do that, we have to make sure our salary is competitive regionally or within Wing Finger Lakes. And so we want to be very aggressive of our salary increases that we offer this specific group within the association. But also blended into this is the extra trips that drivers have to make at the end of the day. Whether it's taking our FFA group somewhere, or taking a sports team to an event, or picking up students at the end of the elementary day for after-school programming. Once again, all to incentivize drivers to do those trips, there's an extra trip rate. That rate has to continue increasing year over year to, once again, keep us competitive, but to also make drivers at the end of their day want to pick up some of these additional shifts, because there's always a need to pick up some of these shifts. As John Lombardi would tell you on any given season, fall, winter, or spring. Contractual expense increase, $24,500 or 57%. So our contractual amount within transportation this year is $43,000. We've blown through that amount of money for contractual expenses. That is our Cintas or our uniforms, or whether it's the company that takes away our used oil, or whether it's a towing company that charges us a significant amount of money when a bus breaks down, or whether it's the mechanic shop to fix a broken transmission, which once again is in multiple thousands of dollars every time a bus breaks down. We have 2 mechanics on site. Those mechanics are very talented at making sure the fluids are changed, oil changes are done, greasing parts, tire rotations, brake jobs, or some basic inspection. But they are not pulling the transmission off a bus, because that means one bus is stuck in a bay for weeks upon end. And so we have, if there's major repairs, we have to send that to a shop. So the $24,500 is strictly to deal with some of those big repairs or accidents or towing to make sure we account for those. You'll also see $8,000 in insurance. There's insurance bills broken up into 2 parts, one for the transportation department, one for the rest of campus. So when I talked about a $20,000 increase for the rest of campus, there's about an $8,000 increase for the bus garage. And finally, our BOCES, which represents our driver training program, that is projected to increase about $6,000. So those are some of the breakdowns that result in the $138,474 increase overall in transportation. Healthcare rate history. I'll say this at the start so that we can set the stage. At no point when that graph goes down from one year to the next does that actually represent a decrease in healthcare. All that means is the percentage you see is the percentage it increased from the previous year. So if I take 21-22 school year, for example, the following year, healthcare increased 21.9%. The next year, an additional 12%. The year after that, an additional 9.5%, and next year, an additional 14.3%. If you take that compounding effect of 21.9 followed by another 12, another 9.5, and another 14.3, you can be rest assured that healthcare has nearly doubled in the last 4 years. And hence, in the last budget presentation, I talked about the high deductible plan, our base plan for our district. When you look at a family high deductible plan, premium plus the healthcare savings account, and add those $2 up, the cheap plan that we have across campus, that cheap plan cost all in $28,000. I wouldn't call that a cheap plan anymore, but it's the cheaper of the 3 plans we offer. There are cheaper plans that the Finger Lakes Area School Health Plan offers. We haven't approached our bargaining units with that because it was only until about 4 or 5 years ago that we actually just introduced the high deductible. But once again, that has now become a rich plan. Right? The next few slides talk about the rate increases to the teachers' retirement system and the employees' retirement system. The first thing I'd like to point out, unlike healthcare, which the graph represents the increase from the previous year, this represents the school district contribution based on the previous year's salary. So if I pick a spot, for example, we're in 24-25. When I look at the graph up above for 24-25, it says Mid-Lakes' contribution is 10.03% of the previous year's salary. So once the previous year is come and gone, the teacher's retirement system says, you have to contribute this percent of last year's overall salaries. Similarly, down below, this year, we have to contribute 15.2% of combined last year's salaries for all non-teaching staff. There's just one problem when you look to the graph on the right-hand side. These are our actual payments for 21-22 through 24-25. You'll notice the ERS, or Employees Retirement System payments, go from $484,000, 22-23, $439,000, $390,000, and this year, we received a billing just before December of $669,000. That is the actual bill. I'm going to go to the next slide for a second because I want to show you the very first number under the state employee retirement. We budgeted $583,500. And now I'm going to go back. If you'll bear with me, we budgeted $583, the bill was $669. I promise you, before year end, you're going to see a budget transfer of the remaining $80,000 where we fell short. There's just another problem, though. They also send us an estimated bill for next year. The estimated bill for next year is $785,000, somewhere to the tune. It's estimated because they end the year. The year goes from almost like an April 1st to March 31st. So if March 31st hasn't come and gone yet, they still have to tally up all the salaries plus the overtime, and then they're going to apply a percentage increase and tell us what we owe next year. So just on one line of benefits, our increase has to be $201,450, just on the state employees retirement system line. Factor in teachers retirement system, an additional $60,000. Social Security, when salaries go up, the amount you contribute in Social Security goes up, an additional $35,000. And then finally, healthcare. 2 slides ago, I showed you the 14.3%. That factors to $379,000. When you add up all those numbers, overall benefits in our district, in our budget, are going up $675,000, or $675,469, or 5.5%. In a handful of slides, you're going to see that this represents nearly 60% of our budgetary increase. And this has not happened before in budget to budgets, but this number represents nearly 60% of the overall budget increase. I said this to a few other folks over last week. All those numbers on that screen are officially out of our control because we receive a bill for how much we owe in the employees' retirement system. We receive a bill for teachers' retirement. We receive a bill for Social Security. We receive a bill for health care, workers' compensation, unemployment insurance. So none of that is in our control, and that's what we're projecting an increase.
Quick question.
Yes, sir.
Look at these numbers again. I'm assuming for the state employment retirement, you budgeted that much money, even though it was, the slide before I said the previous year was $390. They gave you an estimate that it was going up to $580.
It gave us an estimate that it was going up significantly, right? So they release an estimate, but once again, when you start planning your budget and you start locking in numbers, you're doing it while not knowing what the final number is going to be.
Do they often miss by $80,000?
Honestly, it's not a miss, and this is the sad part, because within each percentage, there are Tier 4 employees, Tier 5 employees, and Tier 6 employees within each of those percentages, except what they don't tell you, the percentage, the 15.2% is a blended percentage. So for a Tier 4 employee, it could mean 15%. For a Tier 5, it could mean 16, and for a Tier 6, it could mean 18.2. So it's incredibly hard to calculate based on each tier how much each employee makes and try to factor that and project it to the dollar. So you're always trying to add a little more based on any overtime or any additional hours employees work, but that right there blew us out of the water. That was sticker shock. So, and an even worse sticker shock for the following year of what could be. Great question. So the first 4 I just broke down for you, general support, operation maintenance, transportation, and overall benefits. Once again, I'll say, overall benefits, $675,000 is approximately 58% of the budgetary increase this year. So there's three things I haven't discussed in great detail: special education, athletics, and everything else under the sun. Every teacher salary, every textbook increase, every material and supply increase, or our students going to the BOCES OPED program, we just put that under everything else, other services and general education. Special education is actually going down the overall budget by $90,000. Once again, that's a testament to students changing placement, going from a high-cost private placement to a public placement program, or students graduating, or once again, us keeping more of our students in-house instead of sending them to out-of-district placements. That's a testament to the work done at the special education office. That's causing a $90,000 savings, a much-needed savings. Athletics, there's some increases in coaching salaries, but the bulk of that is officials. And officials set their rate, they tell us what we owe them, and we're just happy to have qualified officials at our events. That's driving the increase in athletics.
Semi-qualified.
I'm not going to touch that one. But then there's everything else. There's general education and other services. But once again, all our teacher salary increases, all our other association increases, BOCES increases for other programs like our occupational ed or our Finger Lakes Technical and Career Center. That adds up to about $390,820. So the overall budgetary increases in expenditures is $1,243,802. 675 of that is benefits. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Nick to talk about some proposed reductions in staffing.
All right. So over the last couple of years, with the sunsetting of federal funds, with less faith in foundation aid, districts in the region have been, it's become necessary to have conversations about reductions in staff. So we spoke as an admin team, full admin team, about the best approach there. And this is, a couple of years ongoing of conversations. And, some of our central questions were essentially this. Do we need to fill this position upon a staff member's retirement, right? We agreed as a group that we would at the very least ask that question every time we had a staff member retire. Do we need to fill this position? And to go a little bit deeper in that, it's, will leaving this position unfilled have a negative impact on our students and our ability to program and teach our students, right? Will it have a negative impact on our school community? And some of the positions, let's take music, for example. Joe Godfrey was here tonight. He's retiring. We need that music teacher next year. So some of those questions are answered pretty quickly. Other ones take a lot of inspection, require us to look at our enrollment data, require us to look at our average class size across a grade level, or the number of classes or sections we're going to offer at the secondary school. So through that process, this year, we've been able to identify 4 positions that we feel in a very confident way that we can leave unfilled with having a minimal impact on our student population and a minimal impact on the district. So all 4 of those positions are actually leaving positions unfilled through attrition, it's called. And when faced with retaining these positions and perhaps running with class sizes 1 or 2 students smaller than we would have if we eliminated the position, we would be put into a place where we hire most likely a younger teacher and then be possibly put in a position in the future where that teacher ends up being the lowest person on the totem pole and we have to cut a position. And then we're saying goodbye to somebody that perhaps we shouldn't have hired in the first place because we should have taken advantage of eliminating a position through attrition. So these positions here, all retirees, and really it is the preferred way to right size, is to do it proactively instead of reactively.
So, Carl, if you want to talk a little bit about the savings that this is going to have for the district, that would be wonderful. So what you see as a salary savings, that's the current salary of these individuals. And if you recall me presenting a long-range financial plan during the January meeting, when you take these salaries and continue to apply the contractual increases, that number continues to grow. When you take the benefits that these folks take up and apply a 14.3% increase for next year, that number continues to grow. So once again, by not replacing these positions, that's just the overall savings of $410,000. That if we had to add $410,000 more to our expenditures for next year, now we've got an even bigger budget gap to close. And that's what some of our neighboring districts are facing, sadly. Retirement is not enough. We've got two districts, one to the east of us, one to the south of us, where, yes, they're saving through retirement, but then they're also cutting staff. And there's no other way for them to close their budget. We luckily are not in that position. So when we talk about how do we close our budget gaps or where do we get our money from, one of the places we can actually use by auditory standards to close our budget gap is our reserves. And year after year, we use a portion of our reserves to help close our budgetary gaps. Last year, we used $740,000 to close that budget gap between expenditures and revenue. What is the total dollar amount in our reserves as of July 1st, 2024? And this was part of my reserve plan as well, $10,666,120. So last year we used about just under 7% of that money. This year, we're proposing to add or use an additional $69,000. That's $69,000 that we're talking about using additional from reserves. We're going to take from the ERS, or Employees Retirement Reserve. Want to guess why ERS? Remember those ERS payments that we talked about going up by $201,000? We're going to take from the Employees Retirement System Reserve an additional $69,000 to close the budget gap. So we're using, once again, 7% of our overall reserves, but that $800,000, I just said 7% of overall reserves, but that's less than 2% of our overall budget. And that's the number auditors like to hear. When an auditor asks a school district, how much of your overall budget is in reserves? If it's 2% or less, they give you the green light. Once you start crossing 2% or getting closer to 4 or 5%, they start to worry if that's a sustainable model year over year. So we're still within the acceptable limits, at least that the auditors recommend.
And I would add to that, our Moody's rating is A1.
Yes.
Which means we get the best borrowing rates when we borrow money. And in addition to that, our fiscal stress, the state puts out, or you might have to go into a little more detail with that, Carl, but each district receives a rating in terms of fiscal stress, and our district is not under fiscal stress. And the preservation of these reserves and making sure that we're using them judiciously are an important piece of retaining both of those standings, so we can continue to get the best value out of any dollar that we have.
Well said. Yeah, thank you. So I just talked about the additional $69,787 from reserves. So that's the third one down. So let me talk about the other places we're anticipating additional revenue. The first one is state aid. Governor Hochul proposed a minimum of 2% increase to foundation aid for every public school across the state. That 2% represents that dollar amount of $414,353. The next one, rental of real property or BOCES. We are getting ready to negotiate, to agree to a new 10-year lease for the BOCES portion or the Mid Lakes Educational Center that takes up a healthy portion of our campus. In that new 10-year lease, we're projecting an increase of revenue of $377,000 every year for the next 10 years. And once again, that has come at a very good time because the budgets are getting tighter, and so any additional source of revenue helps us as we look to the future. We already talked about reserves. Finally, payments in lieu of taxes, a new solar farm coming into the community. The Office of Real Property Tax Services has identified our first year payment increase of $23,000, so that's where the $23,000 is coming from. And then lastly, whatever gap is left is made up using the tax levy. So as we look to the next slide, how much does that gap represent? On the left-hand side of the screen is our proposed expenditures. On the right-hand side of the screen is our proposed revenue. In order to help expenditures match revenue, the tax levy increase that would be needed is $359,662. That dollar amount on the next slide represents a 2.2% increase to the tax levy from the previous year. If you recall, I don't have this slide present tonight, but I had it on the February presentation. Our tax levy limit is 5.15%. As of today, we're at 2.27%. So as of the second budget presentation, we're already less than half of the levy limit. The goal is to whittle that number down even more if we can between now and April 23rd. But I wanted to share this slide because I also want to talk about the narrative. It's something we've been talking about for the last couple years, but sometimes the numbers show it a little better. During federal funding, during the last few years, there was COVID stimulus funds. Phelps-Clifton Springs received a 50% allocation of foundation aid towards full funding. The next year, it received another 50% plus inflation, plus various CPI factors. So if you look at the last, specifically 23-24, our budget to budget increase was 9.44%. That was the second year of the full funding of foundation aid. The year prior, our budget to budget increase was 6.07. So as you look at this year where we are right now, our budget to budget increase as of today is 2.7%. We always talked the last couple of years about when the funds dry up, when districts are fully funded, when state budgets start to tighten up, how we're going to need to tighten the belt. And I feel like now where we are is in that phase of tightening the budget and tightening the belt a little bit. And everything we've done during this budget cycle is in line with tightening the belt or closing the budgetary gap because we only received $414,000 more in foundation from last year to this year. Any questions about the numbers on the slide or historically where the numbers were?
I got one quick thing. That slide, you have to go back to it as it relates to attrition through retiring employees, right?
Yes, sir.
You've talked in the past about declining enrollment. I'm assuming that the class sizes are probably still relatively low compared to even the two elementary school teachers.
So I think
One of these, I didn't want to get into talking about specific individuals, but the one teacher is an AIS teacher, which doesn't have any impact on class size whatsoever. And the elementary special education teacher would be a push-in. We have enough in our special education staffing currently to cover those duties without
Matt, to even add one step further, as I sit down with the elementary school, or we sit down with the elementary school year over year, we look at class sizes, average class sizes at different grade levels. There are some grade levels where the average class size is 14. There may come a point where if a teacher leaves in that, specifically in that cohort, we may say, now's a great opportunity to go from 14 to 17 students. We always want to keep, especially K through 3, we want to try very hard to keep that average class size under 20. But if we're at 14 and we can go to 17 and we can save another position through attrition, we're certainly going to try that. But if it's not feasible, we won't do it. But every single time somebody leaves, like Nick said, we're going to be asking ourselves that question. Because any chance we get to take advantage of that, we should. Yeah.
A quick question as well for the family and consumer sciences at the secondary level. Losing that position will impact that class or size at all, or at least?
So the best answer there is in the establishment of the ag program. The district prior to me did hire another CTE teacher for that grade level, and that's why we had 2 ag teachers. So we were actually running in a surplus in that area. So we're able to use this as an opportunity both to not fill this position, but to also redefine some of the course offerings at the secondary school to be more in line with our ag program.
2.27%. So this slide is using last year's assessment data across our 7 different municipalities. So for a $100,000 home assessment, what does 2.27% look like? So it's broken down into 3 different categories. We've got without star, with star, and enhanced star. I'm gonna, by default, I assume that most people have with star, so I'm gonna talk about the number in the middle. Per $100,000, with a 2.27% increase, your projected tax bill would go up $40.95. Once again, per $100,000. So if it's a $200,000 assessment, you double that number, and you continue to multiply that number by whatever factor of 100,000. But once again, that is a projected tax bill increase for various folks' homes spread across the 7 different municipalities. There's 4 propositions the community will be voting on come May 20th. 3 of them impact the school district. We've got adopting the annual school district budget for the 25-26 school year, electing 2 members to the Board of Education, authorizing the purchase of our 4 buses, plus our 1 sport utility vehicle. We're going to be using our 2019 bus purchase reserve that's mostly depleted, and our new 2024 transportation capital reserve that the voters approved last year. So there's going to be a combination of those 2 reserves, and that's why as one reserve approaches depletion, we go out and ask the community to approve a new savings account or a new reserve. And then finally, the last ballot proposition is for the 2 different libraries in the community. We still have to get that number from the Phelps Library and the Clifton Springs Library at this point, so that number, I just left it off the screen. So between today and April 23rd, we're awaiting a finalized state budget, but in the meantime, we're also looking at our current programming and saying, look, is there a way we can look for further efficiencies to bring that overall number down, to bring that tax levy increase down closer to 2%, where it's currently at 2.27%. Not knowing what the state budget's going to look like, maybe the state budget might be just a little bit more favorable. We might get some additional funds. We're not counting on it at this point, but we have the luxury of waiting till April 23rd to make that determination. And finally, we'll be presenting that final budget, where the final numbers are on April 23rd, with the intent that the board will be approving it shortly after the presentation. Great questions tonight. Any folks have any additional questions to ask? Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Carl.
Thank you, Paul. All right, on to superintendent's report.
Okay. Well, let's see. We have some.
I swear I printed it first. So. There it is. All right. All right, in a little bit, we'll be doing a first read on some policies in the 7,000 sections. Like I said, I tried to make that as efficient as possible. I'll review those policies when it comes up during the new business section of the agenda. So back on March 6th, we had our Mid-Lakes Madness United Way fundraiser. That was a collaboratively planned event. So we need to thank our students from MALO, our students from National Honor Society at the high school, Chris Marquardt, Brittany Sullivan, Kyle Sanders, Aaron Everson, and of course Pam, for the amount of work that went into planning that event. I threw down a challenge like I do each year of if a total of $2,500 is raised through the campaign. This year, the challenge is I will dress in the Eagle mascot costume. I will do trending TikTok dances live on stage during Eagle time, in person, for grades 7 through 12. We'll do a full Eagle time forum. and we would work out the kinks of a live stream over to the elementary school so we can have a full, I don't know about that. Video recording maybe.
Community relations.
It's not gonna be.
I mean, it's gonna go on the website,
So,
right? I mean,
it'll, at this point, based on what was donated between the volleyball game and the basketball game, is gonna take a little bit of work with folks doing some payroll deductions in order to meet the $2,500 mark for the event. So I'll update you at the end of April, and we'll see where we fall. I'm just thankful it doesn't involve blue powder again. Pretty much I'll do anything within reason to avoid that. All right, this past weekend was the Mid-Lakes Theater Experience staging of The Little Mermaid. Shows were Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I was able to go on Friday. It was a hefty crowd, which was nice to see. The students performed wonderfully on stage. The stage crew and the lighting crew and the sound crew did a wonderful job. So it was just a great night to see our students put that on stage. So congratulations to everybody for a successful staging of Little Mermaid. This past Friday, we had our superintendent's conference day, and a big shout out to the administrative team, because we've moved to a model where it truly is a collaborative effort to put these superintendent conference days together. And our focus has really been on the areas of growth that we've identified through our data in terms of instructional strategies for our teachers, data review protocols in order to make sure that we're adjusting properly in the classroom, in order to make sure our MTSS process is leveraging the right data to support our students behaviorally, academically, socially, and emotionally. So it's a huge accomplishment to put that together, and it's the team that does that work. So I want them to know that I do appreciate that, and I do believe that it really does help us move the needle when it comes to student performance academically here in the district. So it's exciting. Back on March 2nd through the 4th, I was able to attend the NISCUS conference in Albany. Just a handful of interesting updates. The two most important sessions I attended, the first one was an executive update. So the governor's secretary on education, so it's not someone who's in the state ed department, it is the governor's secretary of education who's a liaison to the state ed department. She was present, and one of the governor's lead lawyers, so special counsel to the governor, they were present to field questions from superintendents. The first section was facilitated by some NISCUS individuals asking, pre-scripted questions. And some of the most interesting pieces that came out of that is that our state executive office is acknowledging, very clearly that if there is any withdrawing of federal funds due to changes at our federal government level, that our state is not in a position to backfill those funds with state money. So as we hear news of things that are happening with executive orders and withdrawing of funds, we need to pay real close attention to the news, and we need to pay real close attention to what's actually going to happen. So that could become a budgetary stressor. However, I'm cautiously optimistic that that won't be a budgetary stressor, at the very least for this budget season. Another key update is you may have heard murmurings of a quote-unquote bell-to-bell smartphone ban for New York State schools. So the governor is pushing for a bell-to-bell ban. And one of the most important questions asked was, hey, could you please define for us what bell-to-bell means? And in the mind of the governor and what the proposed legislation would be is bell-to-bell would mean from the moment that kids walk into the building to the moment they leave in the afternoon, that they should not have a cell phone in hand. Now, there was a little bit of sidestepping with that where the Secretary of Education did mention that schools may be able to establish locations for students to use their phones during the day, which might feel like, oh, they could use it during lunchtime. So we're all superintendents waiting for clarification on what that means. I think in terms of Board of Education, we will be asked to adopt some form of policy. So we may need to have some more policy update conversations. We'll take a look at draft policies and we'll adopt a policy that makes sense specifically for the Another big topic of conversation is what we call the retiree income cap waiver. So just after COVID, just after the shutdowns, which by the way, it's 5 years by now, if anyone has been thinking about that. My children pointed that out to my wife and I the other day. But it's been 5 years, and in the immediate aftermath of COVID, they did, the state government did put a waiver in place that allowed public employees to receive their full pensions and go back to work full-time for full salary and benefits. Now, that income cap waiver has been extended each year since then. However, there's not a lot of legislative support to continue that because it is viewed by the legislators as really a COVID-era emergency rule. So we're being told right now that it very well could be extended for another year, possibly 2, but don't hold your breath for a long-term, like, blanket waiver in perpetuity. I think, you know, my assessment is the cap on income hasn't been increased in years and years and years, and you can tell by Carl's budget presentation that we have, you know, CPI increases, inflation increases that are off the chart, right? But the income cap hasn't changed at all. So I could see some kind of correction for an overall amount, but I wouldn't see a waiver where someone can come back and make an exorbitant amount of money and collect their pension via long-term solution. So we'll have to wait and see how that pans out. And then some interesting things on electric buses. The governor did refer to the electric bus initiative in a press conference within the last couple of months as aspirational. So now there is this sense that there could be some changes coming with the electric bus mandate, but we have been counseled to not expect anything to change until the 11th hour. And there was a reference of a 2-year waiver that districts could apply for and extend that deadline from 2027 to 2029. So again, we'll have to wait and see what that looks like, but these are things that the governor's folks are now talking about already. So don't expect any of it to happen. That's just our best guess at this point. And that's what makes going up to the NISCUS conference so valuable this time of year, because there's a lot of involvement from officials from state government and the state ed department. So it's time well spent. All right, I want to update you just on a couple more things. Our pool project is underway. I did let the board know through the communicator that once the Marsite was essentially grinded off of the pool surface, that there were some cracks that were discovered. Ryan and his team, along with officials from Watchdog and the pool company Modular, are really trying to see which of these cracks are full-fledged cracks that are leading to any sort of leaking of the pool. And we're engaging with a local contractor, I believe out of Waterloo. Is that correct, Carl? Correct. Yeah. A local contractor out of Waterloo who specializes in concrete repairs, both for skyscrapers and for pools. And they use an epoxy resin and they inject that into the cracks to seal up the cracks. So that would happen. Then they would resurface the pool and move on. We're on schedule at this point with the pool, and there was enough leeway built into the calendar of the project that if we can get this contractor at the right price and at the right time, that the project will remain on schedule. But I'm going to fall just short of promising that because we don't know all of those loose ends yet, but I wanted to make sure that the board knew exactly what was going on. And another little piece is that the filter room has been completely torn out, and they're actually this week starting to install the new equipment in the filter room. So that portion of the project is moving. So once we can address these cracks, that'll be exciting because it'll be building back up as opposed to the demolition period. So that's exciting. We have taken some baby steps with our Campus Forward 2024 project. Thanks to Carl for arranging some architecture and staff meetings this last week. We were able to meet with key staff that are impacted by the weight room upgrade, impacted by the music wing upgrade here, and impacted by the wood shop upgrades and the culinary arts classroom, just to get their input on how those spaces need to function in the future. So then our partners at Edge Architecture can have that in mind as they go to that initial design work and propose a design that makes the most sense right off the bat. So we're moving into the design phase, and that's really exciting for our next capital project. All right, and then there's just a handful of key items that I want to highlight that are on the new business portion of our agenda tonight. First, there's a couple items related to our vote in May, the public notice approval and the approval of our election inspectors. So we're getting ready for our vote in May. There are 4 MOAs on the agenda, and those MOAs are one with the Faculty Association, one with the Employees Association, the Administrators Association, and the Agent Secretaries. And they outline that employees in those units who are full-time will be permitted for the following 2 years, so it's a 2-year pilot, to have their children, if they live out of districts, to have their children come to school here in Mid-Lakes. And we believe that that is good for our school community, and we believe that that could also be a fringe benefit that will allow folks who are thinking about coming and bringing their talents to Mid-Lakes will think about this, because perhaps they want to move their child to Mid-Lakes, and having a job here can make that happen. So we see it as a recruitment tool as well. Thanks to the PCC, we're going to vote to accept a $1,000 donation to the auditorium. And the PCC is doing that because they use our auditorium all the time, and they're thankful. So we appreciate it. It's nothing we ask for, it's just something they do on their own volition. So thanks to Janie over at the PCC. And finally, another baby step with our Campus Forward project. Tonight on the agenda is our full agreement with Edge Architecture to serve as our architect for our next capital project. So that does it for my updates here. So I believe at this point we can move on with the agenda.
Okay. On to board discussion topics. All right, so the ex officio student board member. We had a discussion last time about this, and I wanted to get people's thoughts again. We had other ideas, or heard of other ideas. Nothing's come out from Fort County yet. I was kind of hoping by now we'd have something from Fort County, with whether it's PD or just a discussion about how other districts have done this so far. But nothing has come out yet. So what are your thoughts about how to, I won't say choose, but I think we all agreed last time we don't want to be choosing, but how the student board member is chosen for representation.
I thought we were gonna have the kids express interest, right? Like somebody had to announce that this was gonna be an opportunity, and then have like administration and high school choose based on, I guess we'd have to choose, what are they gonna use it on, right? Like academics, or do they interview them? I'm not really
Right,
sure.
so I think where we ended our discussion was maybe mimicking the process for a school board member to get on, an adult school board member to make it onto the school board. Was, I think that's kind of where we landed, is maybe having them get signatures, maybe 10 signatures, and run and have their peers vote. The law has very specific, for the most part, I think they're pretty specific rules about who the person has to be, as far as they have to be essentially a junior. They have to be elected for the following year. They have to be part of the student body in our district for at least a year. There's some stipulations there, but I don't know if we're still kind of thinking that, or doing something where admin picks somebody based on some criteria, or?
I still like that idea. I guess my question would be, did it take some time? We wouldn't be looking at that fairly soon.
In the library.
Well, that's the thing, they have to be elected by July
Yeah.
1st, so,
We've already handed out adult packets.
right.
Or they've been made available, so.
Right, because that vote is in May. I mean, really, they could vote.
They
as
could
late
pick up
as-
the packets within the next
We should make packets.
4
soon,
weeks,
right?
5
Right,
weeks,
right.
and the vote is in May, beginning of June. In
Right,
July,
I mean, they could vote in June,
Yeah.
first or second week of June, and
Yeah.
still.
I'm not necessarily for the admin picking it, I'm more for their peers picking their leader. That's its own purpose.
Yeah, I mean, I like that idea.
If the board's in agreement that we run a vote and basically emulate the process of a board member vote, Dan and I can work together to put together a calendar at timeline.
Yeah, it'd be good to get that going. I was gonna ask anyways, when we're gonna start that, because you got drum of interest and.
Right, right, so do we have to do an official vote to prove that that's how we're going to?
That's a
Do
good
it.
question.
So I think we may have to, but, which we could do at the April meeting. But in the meantime, we can get some of these details figured out, like creating the timeline, creating the paperwork that the student has to complete, you know, the signature form and whatever else. And so that as soon as April 23rd, I think is when that comes and we approve that, then we can officially start.
Yeah, if there's
Which I think is
informal
still enough
agreement
time.
here, we can start the planning phase.
You know, they can
So-
speak at the May meeting and things.
I mean, they have to speak to their peers, we're not voting for them.
No,
I
that's
mean,
true.
Yeah,
That's
but, I mean, I would say they probably have to
You have to speak at the.
speak in front of their peers or something to,
So whether it's like an Eagle time.
Yeah, we leverage the forum or
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
Now, would that have to become policy?
So ultimately, there's a policy that we have to adopt as well. And that's why I think,
So we have a current policy, and there are other districts that have ex officio student members of the board. But prior to this change in regulation and law, there were very specific things that had to happen in order for you to officially have an ex officio member, including, I'm forgetting what the detail is, but essentially they said you don't have to do that anymore. And because we don't have to do that anymore, we can basically select a process that we see fit, that fits within 7 or 8 specific things that we covered a few meetings ago.
right, I could try to find the list again, but it might take me a bit.
So it would be a minor tweak in that policy.
So are we in agreement to at least get that process started, then we'll vote officially in April 23rd? Is that right, 23rd?
Yes,
Okay.
Wednesday.
Yeah,
the
I don't want
23rd.
to speak the wrong date. So
So
we could,
Wednesday,
if we
correct.
need to vote officially, we can vote officially on the 23rd. If we determine we don't need an official vote, then we can get things moving quicker, but, essentially, yeah, follow similar process to how we did. The vote comes out by the years. I like it. All right, check that one off the list. Fort County SBA, that's interesting, right? So, is the bill? Okay, so we're, okay. So, does anyone have any questions? So if you, if you go to new business item E and the Fort County election ballot, any discussion around the officers that are up for election, or the banking signatories, or which bank we use? Lots of ideas. I'm confident that Robin and Julie will do a fine job. I think they're very involved and they have a good vision as to where they would like to see Fort County go. And so I'm excited about, this direction that we're headed and the people that we have in place. So, can we, when we get to the voting part, can we just do vote for one, yes for all four things that we're voting on? And then as a follow-up, if you have ideas, if you have topic speakers you'd like to see Fort County offer next year, you can let me know now or get a hold of me within the next 2 weeks so that we can get the information back to Fort County. So what topics or speakers would you like to hear about? Do you have any suggestions for the spring education conference next year? And then if we would be interested in facilitating a student-led presentation workshop at our spring conference next year and what we would like them to present on. I don't know, maybe our egg department would growth, but present on the growth that they've seen in the last couple of years. So, but if there's any other thoughts or ideas, either speak now or let me know in the next 2 weeks so that I can get all the information compiled and get it to Pam to send with our ballot. Does anybody have any thoughts right now? Okay. All right. So moving on. Committee reports. Anything from legislative committee?
So they actually moved it to the 22nd, so we'll be meeting this coming Saturday.
Got it. Okay. Policy committee keeps we keep making progress. You'll hear more about that in a little bit. Is there a safety meeting coming up for the spring?
Thursday.
Oh,
Yep.
Really soon, okay, this week. Also Friday this week is the Fort County Spring Conference. I think I have a board member going, but I think Rick and Carl are both going. So we'll have some information, hopefully good information to bring back from that. Any other committees that have met? Budget committee.
Just met today, yep. Just had some good discussions
Okay.
with Matt and Heather. But once again, essentially the same information we presented, but it just gave some relatively new board members a chance to digest some more information, ask some more questions, and just grow their understanding.
Estimate.
He was right.
It's never too many questions when it comes to the budget stuff. There's a ton. Carl does a great job at bringing it down to understandable terms for me, but I also heard it 7 years. And
Too many for the time allotted.
Time So, all right. Anybody else have anything? How many other things that I can think of? I don't think it's skipping anything. Okay. All right. Public comment. The Board of Education values the input of the Mid Lakes community and welcomes public comment on any topic related to board work, with the exception of matters pertaining to individual personnel and/or students. All public comments must include appropriate language and observe proper decorum. Anyone making public comment must identify themselves by name and address. The public comment period will be limited to a total of 30 minutes and 1 comment per person. Individual comments will be limited to 2 minutes. The board does not respond to items presented or questions raised through public comment. However, the board may discuss topics of public comment at a later time or contact the individual who submitted the comment. No comments tonight. Thank you, Marco. Okay, on to new business. So if there are no objections, I'd like to block items A and B. Notice of the annual meeting, budget vote, and election, and the election inspectors. Is there a motion to approve items A and B as presented? Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of items A and B as presented, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carried. Item C, the long-range financial plan. So this is, Carl, whenever this last meeting, or two meetings ago. Are there any questions, any discussion? There's another copy of it here in our packets tonight. Is there a motion to approve the long-range financial plan as presented? Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of item C, long-range financial plan as presented, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carried. All right, item D, the 2025-26 district calendar. Geez, it seems futuristic. Whew, okay. Is there a motion to approve the district calendar as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Did you want to touch on any minor changes that happened since the last one?
So, there weren't any changes on this particular one
Okay,
from
from
the
the last
draft.
time that we, okay.
Correct.
It's just that the changes from last year's schedule, like, we don't have a superintendent's conference day before Labor Day. And
Oh,
that's
correct,
right?
which I covered last time.
Yes, yeah, okay. So any discussion about the calendar? All right, all those in favor of the 2025-26 district calendar as presented, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carried. On to E, the 4 County SBA official ballot. So, can I get a motion to vote yes for the 4 items on the ballot?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of voting yes for all 4 items for voting on the ballot, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried. Item F, the 2025 capital improvement project agreement. Is there a motion to approve the agreement as presented? Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of item F, the 2025 capital improvement project agreement as presented, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried. G, the memorandum of agreement. There's 4 of them, as mentioned earlier. Is there a motion to approve the memorandum of agreements as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of item G as presented, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carried. H, policy manual modification.
All right,
Woo!
here we go. That's right. All right. So I have to open this by telling you I made a slight error in my calculations in my last presentation for section 7000. I didn't realize that there were 4 rows in my spreadsheet that were not actual policies. So I reported there were 79 policies in this group. There are 75. Okay. I noticed that the other day. So remember, there were 53 policies that were identical to our current policies, and there are 22 policies that have differences or potential changes. And we're going to look at a handful of those policies tonight. These are the categories in section 7000. We went over this last time. So our focus in February were the 53 policies that are identical, and we're just going to note that those policies were reviewed by the board and they will stay as is. For tonight, there are 22 policies that have differences that are going to require a first read, a second read, and adoption. Tonight, we're going to do a first read on 12 policies, a second read and adoption in April. In April, we'll have another 7 policies in this group up for a first read, a second read in May, an adoption in May, and then there are actually 3 policies that we're going to retire out of this group. All right, so in order to keep myself organized for now versus April and moving forward, any policy you see that is in gray is a policy that we're not going to talk about tonight. Those are the ones that we're going to have a first read next month, okay? So I just wanted them to be here so you could see it, and also it'll help me in creating my presentation for next time. So in our attendance section tonight, we're going to look at the entitlement to attend, age and residency, that's policy 7130. Education of students in temporary housing, that's 7131. And then we're going to glance over our non-resident student policy 7132, because that's actually going to stay as is. But we did not cover that last time, so I wanted to make sure it was at least discussed tonight. So entitlement to attend. So there was a brief section in this policy. It's essentially the same as our current policy. There was a brief section that basically says, hey, don't forget that there are special rules for homeless students. And then please refer to our policy on students in temporary housing. All right, so there's almost zero change there. For education of students in temporary housing, this hasn't been looked at since 2012, and since then there's been a refinement in how we approach students in temporary housing, so homeless youth and students who qualify for protections under the McKinney-Vento Act. So it's just an expanded policy to ensure compliance with laws, all right? But it doesn't really change the intent or spirit of the policy. In our non-resident students, 7132, we are sticking with the policy that's currently on record. So that'll be the last you see of that, so we'll call that a reviewed policy at this point. Okay, now this slide has a lot of color on it. So again, the ones that are in gray are ones we're going to talk about next month. The ones in black we're going to talk about tonight, and the ones in red with strike-throughs are policies that we're going to plan to retire. So let's talk about the retired policies first. First, we have a homegrown policy for makeup credit programs for high school students, a homegrown policy on high school class rank and grade point average, and a homegrown policy on honor students that outlines essentially the cut points for honor roll, okay? Those three policies are better handled as part of the student handbook at the secondary school. So we're gonna retain our practices. We don't plan on changing those practices. They are long-standing practices when it comes to our valedictorian, salutatorian, top 10, and our cut points for honor roll. Everything will remain as is. However, we're just not going to retain a policy on it, okay? And our makeup credit programs for high school students, the language within the regulations for makeup credit programs for high school students is essentially verbatim to what we currently house in policy. I reached out to the specialists at Erie One, and they said, feel free to retire that policy and just default to the regulations. So that's what we're going to do, and try to simplify our policy manual just a little bit. Okay, so provisions of interpreter services to parents who are hearing impaired. Superficial changes, it's a long-standing policy. The changes in the policy do not impact our obligations and do not impact how we will do business when it comes to securing interpreter services for any parents who have hearing issues and qualify for those services. Student directory information. So there were changes, or there are changes in terms of the size of the list of directory information. So the way that FERPA, or the Federal Education Rights to Privacy Act, is written, basically says if a student has confidential information like their grades, their attendance, their behavioral record, that is not for public disclosure. That is their private record, and there's a federal law that protects that. It then goes on to say, however, schools may release specific information that does not violate people's privacy, okay? Things like a student's name, their grade level, address, home address, home phone number, and a whole laundry list of other things. So the problem with the policy we currently have is the district has actually slowly elaborated the definition of directory information over the last 13 years. And we have practices currently in place that the old policy does not reflect. All right, that's about as plain as I can say. The new policy from Erie One, they asked us questions about how we handle certain things. Do you do this? Do you do that? Do you do this? In terms of disclosing things. So a good example is we disclose to the newspaper honor roll students. We're giving names, we're giving grades. So the newer policy better reflects our actual practices here in the district with an expanded definition of directory information. And the caveat to all of this is we don't release directory information very much at all, actually. We release it strategically in very small pockets to very specific vendors if need be, but not in an arbitrary and capricious way. So we'll expand the definition of that directory information because it reflects our and then student privacy, parental access to information and administration of certain physical exams to minors. So this policy is almost word for word the same, except for one small section that deals with if a parent makes a request for curriculum resources. So a parent could request to the district office, hey, I would like to see all curriculum resources for Regents physics, right? And it would be our obligation under a certain amount of time to release that information to the parents. Our current policy indicates a time frame of 10 days. The updated policy has a time frame of 30 days. And I think that that's just in an effort to give districts a little bit more time and leeway amidst a busy working calendar in order to be able to provide that information without having it, without the added pressure, I suppose. And if it's a 10-day window and it's Christmas break, right, that can really cause trouble. So a 30-day window, I think, makes a lot more sense on this end, especially if we're managing multiple class. So that's the only change in that policy away from the current policy. In the student conduct section, we will talk about timeout and physical restraint next time. Today we're going to take a quick look at alcohol, tobacco, drugs, and other substances. So this policy does change. The old policy has a section for prevention and intervention when it comes to substance abuse. The new recommended policy from Erie 1 BOCES eliminates the prevention and intervention piece. And that's not to say we don't do it. It's really more about strategies and tactics on intervention and prevention are constantly changing. And the current policy has this specifically articulated thing that we're supposed to do, whereas we've grown into a model where a lot of this happens through our pupil support office and outside agencies, so we don't want to be pigeonholed into one cookie cutter way of intervening and being preventative with substance abuse. Yep, cover that. All right. Student activities, we're going to take a look at sports and the athletic program. And a new policy, student voter registration and pre-registration. We'll take a look at musical instruments and employment of students of a minor age next meeting. So student activities, sports and athletic program, superficial changes, the intent and implementation of all of those pieces are identical. So superficial changes, everything essentially remains the same. Student voter registration and pre-registration. So this is a new policy. It's required by Ed Law Section 5-507, which is new, and it compels districts to engage students who can pre-register to vote. We have to, is essentially what it says. So we're actually engaging in this practice right now. It's embedded into the government curriculum. Our government teachers provide students with the documents necessary to pre-register to vote, and then we actually seal up those envelopes and send them in on the student's behalf. So we did have some discussions at the policy committee level regarding communication to parents that this is happening. So I've had a conversation with Mr. McElpin about making sure that we're letting parents know, hey, your child is going to be registering to vote in our government class during this unit. Make sure you have a conversation with your child at home about registering to vote and political affiliation. Because it's not our intent to sway a child in any direction politically, it's merely to offer them the opportunity to register to vote so they can have their voice heard upon the time of their 18th birthday in the next election. So, and that's what's in the educational law. So that's what we'll do. And then in student welfare, medication and personal care items, students with life-threatening health conditions, and then notification of sex offenders. So, some changes here, medication and personal care items. So the old policy indicates that we will maintain a stockpile of albuterol in the case that a child who requires a nebulizer treatment, in the case that their parent hasn't brought the nebulizer treatment or the actual albuterol to school. The new policy eliminates that as a policy item in that we aren't holding albuterol for nebulizer treatments. We do have a nebulizer available, but the policy doesn't compel us to maintain that stockpile any longer. The policy does include that we will have feminine hygiene products available in bathrooms for our female students at no cost for the student. Those are the biggest changes there. Students with life-threatening health conditions, the spirit of the policy remains the same. However, since 2012, there has been a relaxation on holding and administering life-saving medication, even if it's for a person who has an unknown allergy and it's a surprise and a student goes into anaphylaxis, that not only can a school nurse administer the epinephrine, but anyone that the school nurse trains can administer the epinephrine, whereas in the old days, there was a more rigorous training that had to take place for someone to administer the epinephrine. So now that we've relaxed that and realized that it's not that hard, honestly, and under the right training from a nurse, anybody could administer epinephrine to save someone's life. And the same is true for naloxone or Narcan, which can stop someone who has overdosed on opiates from dying. So there was one section removed from the policy, and that section was the one that required the higher level of training to administer the epinephrine. Other than that, the policy is identical. And then finally, the notification of sex offenders. The intent of the policy doesn't change, and it's superficial changes. It's still incumbent upon us to do what's in that policy, and it doesn't really change how we operate. And then in our last section in the 7,000s, children with disabilities, we'll talk about that next time. So that does it. Those are all the policies that I just went through, which we're going to constitute as a first read. Are there any questions on any of those policies? And I know it's a lot, and I know it's getting late. All right, so that's what we're going to talk about next time, and we'll go from there. So, thank you.
Thank you. So, is there a motion to approve the policy reading modifications as presented?
Mm-hmm.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of the policy readings and modifications as presented, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carried. On to items I through K. If there's no opposition, I'd like to block items I through K. Donations, items for disposal, and replace fundraisers. Is there a motion to approve items I through K as presented? Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carried. All right, on to personnel. There's no objection. I'd like to block items A and B, the appointments and substitute appointments. Is there a motion to approve items A and B as presented? Is there a second? Any discussion? All those in favor of items A and B as presented say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carried. On to item C. Is there a motion to approve item C, the coaching appointments for the 2024-25 school year as presented? Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of item C, the coaching appointments as presented, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Item D, unpaid leave. Is there a motion to approve the unpaid leave as presented? Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of item D as presented, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. And I'd like to block items E and F. Consent to retire and resignations. Is there a motion to approve items E and F as presented? Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of items E and F as presented, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. On to adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn the regular board meeting for the purpose of entering into executive session to discuss matters relating to the employment, discipline, dismissal, or removal of a particular person, proposed, pending, or current litigation and collective negotiations? Is there a second? Any discussion? Good night, bedtime reminder. All those in favor of adjournment, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries.